So really impressed by the turnout tonight. Thank you everyone joining us here and on Zoom. So I'm speaking tonight as representative of the Coastal Resilience Committee. We're grateful to Byron for hosting this event. And I just want to start out by sort of laying the framework here in terms of Block Island and Nantucket. Block Island and Nantucket share many similarities. We're nearby island communities facing sea level rise, erosion, and stronger storms, but we're also very different. Nantucket is larger with more resources and greater lower lying topography. And they're also much further along in planning and implementing coastal resilience projects. So that difference is exactly why I think tonight matters. There's real value in learning from a community that's already several steps ahead, especially when we can take those lessons and adapt them to our own, unique character, scale, and priorities. So I wanted to ground the conversation. Ground the conversation a bit in highlight the risks that we're already planning for here. Sea level rise is accelerating between 1976 and 2016. So a 40-year period, there are 6 inches of sea level rise. Rhode Island is expecting additional 6 inches just in the next, well, not next, but 2017 to 2033, another 6 inches. So that's a 16-year period. Long-term projections show 3 to 6.5 feet of sea level rise by 2100. With them, I just at 6 feet there, but when I looked it up, I expecting 6.5 now, with potential for major shoreline changes. And across Rhode Island, about 95% of the coastline is eroding and losing an average of 2 feet per year. So we don't have Block Island specific data to compiled and analyzed yet in terms of what we experience here, specifically sea level rise and coastal erosion, but we do have measurements happening. So that was something that we hope to be able to do and contribute. The rising sea levels directly affect roads. They affect our drinking water. They affect emergency access and many other aspects of daily life on the island. More frequent and intense storms is another thing that we're seeing. Higher sea levels mean storm surge reaches further inland, causing flooding and accelerating erosion. Nantucket is already responding to this reality, and their experience shows what happens when planning turns action. Just to mention, this table here shows what used to be, for example, a 100-year storm is now going to be 2050, the equivalent of a 50-year storm. More frequently. So a little bit on the Coastal Resilience Committee, which I'm going to refer to as CRC. That's what that acronym stands for. It was established by the Town Council in 2021 as a 9-member voluntary advisory group. Our role is to gather scientific data, combine it with community knowledge, and advise the town on priority actions to improve coastal resilience. That includes understanding the risk, engaging the community as we are tonight, and evaluating adaptation and mitigation strategies. So it's important to note that we do not have a counterpart on the town staff, and we do not have funding or structure to implement projects ourselves. So all the grant funding that we help secure with the town is managed by the town, and our role is in implementation is only advisory and in support of the community engagement. We've organized ourselves into working groups and to points of contact because there are so many priority areas and things happening to keep tabs on all of it. We do work between the monthly meeting and we organize ourselves this way to make sure that we're keeping tabs on everything. And I have to say our volunteer members contribute a great deal of their time year round to advancing this work, but there's also only so much a volunteer committee can do without additional town resources. So these are the plans that we have. We do not have a comprehensive assessment or a standalone long-term plan related to coastal resilience. Currently, we have a coastal resilience section in our comprehensive plan, which expires this year and will be updated and replaced with a new type of plan later this year. A municipal resilience plan, which is required by the state and feeds into the Resilient Brody. That's the name of the state resilience plan and strategy, Resilient Brody. So we have that, and we have our hazard mitigation and flood management plan. None of these are particularly long term. And while we do have goals, resilience related goals across those plans, again, we don't have one clear comprehensive one that looks at the issue of coastal erosion, flooding, and public resilience. So here's a list of the resilience goals that you see across the plan. Our goals range from protecting Corn Neck Road and managing stormwater to conserving land, maintaining power, educating the public, and planning for emergencies. So a consistent theme here and in Nantucket is that resilience isn't one project. It's an ongoing planning mindset, and it's also cross-cutting in terms of requiring coordination across multiple town departments and with relevant state agencies. So as a town and community, we have made some meaningful progress. We formed the CRC. We've installed dune walkovers. We've run composting efforts thanks to the Block Island Conservancy. We've engaged the community in multiple junctures and participate in FEMA's flood insurance program. And we also have important projects underway or planned, including the continued work on Corn Neck Road resilience and dune restoration and the upcoming comprehensive plan update. At the same time, we recognize what's still needed: dedicated staff capacity, a comprehensive long-term resilience plan, sustainable funding, and more shovel-ready projects. So designs of things we want to do that when the time comes, we have a plan ready to go. These are all areas where Nantucket experience is especially instructive. So I just wanted to highlight one of those, well, really the most significant project currently underway, which some of you may have heard about. We just had a program on April 2nd, where the consultants that were hired by the town presented some conceptual designs of beach pavilion, recited beach pavilion designs. So Superstorm Sandy undermined the road and washed away protected dunes. And because the town lacked shovel-ready alternatives, we had to spend $1.7 million repairing 1,800 feet of roadway, field planting and roadway. In 2013, we had a transportation study, transportation resiliency planning study that examined elevating the road or constructing a raised bridge, and it also includes concepts for nature-based solutions. So we have received a grant in 2024. The town received a grant from the Rhode Island Infrastructure Bank from the National Wildlife Foundation to undertake planning and design for some of these nature-based solutions. So the first phase, which is essentially complete at this point, is got to the parking area, the field paths, and also looked at but ended up focusing on the beach pavilion conceptual design. Phase 2 is going to be starting this year, and the town needs to work with Rhode Island PPM on refining the scope and will likely address additional vulnerable areas for the southern part of Corn Neck Road, where Rebecca is, as well as the marsh side, the Eagle Beach area. And it could, if the town decides it wants to take one of the beach pavilion concepts to a shovel-ready design. So the effects has exactly similar infrastructure challenges at a larger scale, and again, they're on funding, phasing of the public process, which are really relevant for us here. So I want to end with this, that Block Island does not need to become Nantucket. Our vulnerabilities, timeline, and solutions will be different. But learning from a community that is further along and one that has already moved from planning to implementation can help us avoid missteps and move forward more effectively. I also want to mention, as Joe did, that following the presentation, we'll have Q&A and discussion, and we welcome all comments and questions, and we encourage you to use your index cards, and we'll have them to make note of anything as you go. And you can give them to us if you don't want to ask the question directly. You're also welcome to ask the question directly. Anything that's just comments that you need to take home, just write CRC at the top of your card and take that feedback. And just a few questions to kind of start your wheels turning as you listen to Leah's presentation that we thought might be helpful. So what lesson from Nantucket resonates most for the Block Island community? What's one thing that you like and one thing you would like to see changed about the town's approach to resiliency? What actions can you take to mitigate the worst impacts of coastal erosion? Okay, so with that, we're very pleased to welcome Leah Hill, Nantucket's Coastal Resilience Coordinator, who's going to share lessons from Nantucket. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me okay in the back? Great. Thank you for being here tonight. And a special thank you to the Coastal Resilience Committee and the Block Island Residents Association for inviting me out here. Before we even got off the boat, my daughter, who's in the front, said, "Can we move here?" You might be seeing us again. So tonight, the goal is to share what Nantucket has learned, what worked, what didn't work, and what may be useful for another small coastal community like Block Island. So there's a lot of facts about Nantucket up here. I'm not going to read all of them. But like Ann said, there's a lot of parallels between Nantucket and Block Island. Even though Nantucket is larger, we all face, very similar coastal hazards. We have that seasonal population swing. So for us, our year-round residents are about maybe 17,000, probably more. And then in the summer, that can jump up to 60 to 80,000 people on any given day. We are tourism-based, and it's expensive to live on the island. So a median house is about $3.5 million, which is insane. Wow. But for our family income, the median is about $160,000. So there's quite a discrepancy between kind of the year-round population and the seasonal population. And then we also have aging infrastructure, and Nantucket is a historic landmark. We have historic districts everywhere, so that always plays into when planning for coastal resiliency. Resiliency is not just protecting shorelines, it's really the ability to adapt, recover, and keep daily life functioning as storms, flooding, and sea level rise continue in intensity and frequency. So it's really important to plan ahead versus reacting after damaging storm events for a number of reasons. Obviously, to ensure community safety, reduce daily disruptions to life and work. And planning allows the community to decide what should be done instead of having the state or federal government come in and do what they want, right? You want to give input, what you want to see on your island. And it saves a lot of money. So planning can be expensive, but what's even more expensive is not doing anything and waiting for that storm to come that costs tens, hundreds of millions of dollars of damages. The U.S. Chamber of Commerce says that for every dollar spent in resiliency planning, you can get a return of about $13 in avoided costs and damages. So that's quite a bit, probably even more living on an island. And resilience, it's not a new term, right? We're islanders. You have to be resilient to live on an island. You have to be adaptive. If the ferry gets canceled, you got to switch your plans, right? Like, this is nothing new. And resiliency is a process that's never ending. So you assess your risk and vulnerability at the top, you plan and you prioritize, you implement that project, and then you have to wait for a storm to come to see, did that project actually work? If it didn't work, what do you need to change? If if it did work, wonderful. There's always monitoring and maintenance for these resiliency projects. You don't just construct them and walk away. You always have to maintain them. And I like to show this picture because this is on the South Shore of Nantucket. And a homeowner spent, I think, $250,000 on this pretty robust sand fencing, and it didn't work. So the next slides are the process of how Nantucket really developed our coastal resilience plan. We first started with the vision, and the key question here was, what kind of island do we want to remain? We built on 7 prior town plans to get to where we are today. So the resiliency planning roadmap, there's a lot going on in here, and I won't go over it. But really, Nantucket started planning in earnest in 2019 when we had to update our hazard mitigation plan. So the community came together, and from that, the 2 top priorities were to create a coastal resilience czar, which came to my position, coastal resilience coordinator, and then create a coastal resilience plan. Also in 2019, we had the Coastal Resilience Advisory Committee developed as well, which is very similar to your CRC here. From there, in 2020, we did an island-wide risk assessment, which I'll talk about in a little bit, but that really put a dollar amount on the take no action scenario and use science to predict current and future hazard risk. Then, based on the risk assessment, the Coastal Resiliency Plan was developed. And that was endorsed by our select board in early of 2022. From 2022 to 2026, about half of the 40 recommendations within the Coastal Resiliency Plan are either underway, complete, or ongoing. So we've really been making a lot of headway. The next category is the coastal risk assessment. So using those prior plans, a risk analysis, and then focus areas. So we broke the island up into 5 or 6 different areas. That helped us refine and prioritize the community engagement. So these are all the coastal risks we see on Nantucket. Erosion, we have one of the highest erosion rates in Massachusetts. So I think it's around 12 feet on average per year, but actually some areas are experiencing at least 20 feet per year. So seeing a house, and all these pictures are from Nantucket, seeing a house falling off the bank, unfortunately, is nothing new. So we've got erosion, we have groundwater table rise, which is kind of a new phenomenon a lot of people don't know about. And that's when the groundwater underneath actually comes to the surface, because as sea level rises, that pushes up on our freshwater lens. And so ponds can expand, wetlands can expand, or maybe get drowned out. And then areas that used to be dry are now wet, which exacerbates flooding. We have coastal flooding, obviously, from storms. We have stormwater flooding from rain, and then we have high tide flooding as well. So the risk assessment really quantified this as far as how many private homes are going to be at a loss, how many public buildings, miles of roadway, open space, businesses, etc. So we're talking about thousands of structures from 2020 out to 2070 that are at risk. And anecdotally, we knew areas flooded or had erosion, but we didn't know what does that look like in different time horizons in 2030 and 2050 and 2070. And let me tell you, it's just going to get worse as time goes on, unfortunately. And then this map came out as well in our risk assessment. And this answered the question, why invest in now? These circles that you see equate to millions of dollars. So the pink ones, one pink circle's $50 million. You can see our whole downtown is pink because we're in a flood zone. And that's where all the businesses mostly are. So that's a problem. And with the estimate of the take no action, we meaning the town and private property, back in 2020, it was $3.4 billion from 2020 out to 2070. But with inflation, just over the last, 6 years or so, that's increased by almost $1 billion, which is crazy. And I looked at the map and to explain, the cost of if we take no action, because it's, people equate most things to money. And so if they can understand what that means with a dollar value rather than some hypothetical thing, then it kind of puts them at more of like, all right, we got to do something. The next box is the Coastal Resiliency Toolkit. So this was based on expertise and knowledge of those areas around the island. It was refined with the risk assessment and community engagement, and then that helped develop the different strategies. And for the toolkit, there's kind of 3 different methods for resiliency. So on the far left, there is protect, which is, you're keeping the water out. Think about those hard structures, your rock revetments, your jetties, your bulkheads, that sort of thing. Then in the middle, there's adapt. You're living with the water. Think of the nature-based solutions such as dune restoration, or if it's a structure, actually elevating it out of the flood zone. So when it floods, instead of coming in through your front door, it's actually going under the house. And then the last, if you try those first 2, is to relocate or retreat. So actually moving away from the water, moving out of that risky area. And usually retreat and relocation are kind of the last option. So there's no, single solution that works everywhere, but success really comes from using all 3 tools strategically based on the area and what you're trying to protect. And then the evaluation criteria helped establish a guide for ranking all of the proposed strategies. And there's 5 different criteria. So effectiveness, and I should say all the strategies had to hit all 5 criteria in order to get placed into the Coastal Resilience Plan. So as far as effectiveness, is the strategy effective at addressing coastal risks to homes, businesses, critical facilities, community assets, and infrastructure? Feasibility. Can the strategy actually be implemented given technical, regulatory, funding, cost, community support, and operations and maintenance considerations? I think this is probably the most important one, right? Why develop something if you actually can't pay for it or implement it? Then the ecological and public health benefits. So are there benefits that fit these 2 boxes? For the community over time? Equity and quality of life benefits. Does the strategy improve quality of life and adding value for residents and visitors and promoting community development? And then the last value creation. Does the strategy create new opportunities and economic value for the community? So with all of those boxes, then we came into helped us develop those 40 strategies that are within the Coastal Resilience Plan. And those were refined by community engagement, technical analysis, and then prioritized as well. Moving into the actual Coastal Resilience Plan, this is a roadmap. It's not a promise to build everything right now. It aligned resiliency with access, ecosystems, public space, and safety. And it was really helpful for framing that community buy-in. Yeah. So there's 5 goals within it. Really the overarching goal is to build coastal resiliency to reduce coastal risks from flooding and erosion out to 2070. This is also in the plan, which I brought the plan in the back. It's about 300 pages long, but it has some nice pictures in there and map. And so the 40 recommendations are really island-wide. These are the different areas of the island that we broke it into. And ideally, all of the recommendations should really be implemented as soon as 2050. So the key lesson here is really to break resiliency into many implementable actions over time. Again, not everything is urgent, but having a prioritized pipeline avoids piecemeal reactive decisions after storms, which are more expensive. The next kind of what I'll shift into are coastal resilience plan recommendations of projects that are underway that I thought would be pretty applicable to Long Island. So at the end of the plan, there's this great table that lists all 40 recommendations and what their priorities are for second or third based on our risk assessment. It gives a brief description and then the type. Is it non-structural? Is it some sort of policy? Is it structural, like elevating roadways? Or is it nature-based, like using oyster restoration or dune restoration? Then it gives cost estimates, which is very helpful with the town planning, far in advance these large capital projects. Are there benefits that we can put dollar amounts on too, as far as like creating public access and mobility? And then target implementation dates that were based on the risk assessment. When should this actually be, put in place? It also goes into the different champions for each project. So me being the single coastal resilience coordinator, I can't implement all 40 of these. I need to rely on, my colleagues and the DPW and planning and revenue services, etc. So the ones in blue are policies that help actually implement the coastal resiliency plan. So we're working on updating our zoning bylaw to incorporate coastal resiliency and really kind of de-incentivize building, densities in high-risk areas. We have already updated our wetland ordinance and regulations, so that's with the Conservation Commission. Before there wasn't even a definition of sea level rise in those regulations. We're currently working on stormwater bylaw assessment and regulation update. I don't know about you guys, but our stormwater system is terrible. It is old and piecemeal and does not function. And then we have adopted using the high sea level rise scenario and the best available flood hazard data. And this has been really helpful for specific projects, really to help plan. So we're essentially planning for the worst, but hoping for the best using that scenario. The Easy Street Flood Mitigation Project is the highest priority recommendation within the Coastal Resiliency Plan. And that was the select board agreed to that, and so did the Coastal Resiliency Advisory Committee. And the reason for that is because this road that's underwater about 75 times a year, and that's going to get worse. That's our only way to get to the Steamship Authority, which is our lifeline. That's our vehicle. All our goods and services come from there. So we've received a grant from the state to start planning this 3 years ago. The goals are really to reduce flood risk here. I tell the community, it doesn't mean that there's not going to be water on the road, but it means that this road can stay open and so that we can get to the ferry. So that we've had heavy stakeholder engagement and a lot of questions arose that we didn't anticipate. So this next phase of the project, we put in specific tasks to answer those questions by the community. So a lot of the abutters, okay, if you put this in, what does that mean to my property? What's going to happen? What's going to happen when the groundwater table rises? Like, is this road going to be affected? We don't know. we're putting in groundwater wells and creating a model to figure it out. So the options here, which this is not technical, I'm not going to go into like the weeds here, but we have 3 different design options. 2 of them are elevating the road, so getting it out of building height. And then the other is to replace the bulkhead systems with an actual flood wall. So bulkheads, they're great for keeping, the land where it is, but they allow water to come in and out. Flood walls actually keep the water out. And this has been 3 years in planning. So planning takes a while. The next project is the Francis Street Beach Improvement Project. So the map on the right is from the resiliency plan. That's one of the recommendations. It's called a downtown neighborhood flood barrier. It's all on land. The concept is, elevate roadways and bulkheads and use nature-based solutions when you can to help protect our downtown area. So this area here is also a very critical intersection because it's the egress and ingress to downtown. So all our trucks are coming through here, and there's 2 flood pathways on this beach. So the hope is to create the dune system, build it up in elevation, and have an ADA accessible boardwalk that goes from the road up over the dune and onto the beach to help kind of close off those flood pathways and keep that intersection as dry as possible. And then inland to monitor or manage the stormwater, create rain gardens for that rain to come off the street, go into the rain gardens, get filtered by the native vegetation before it goes, directly discharged out to our harbor. So I have some concept designs here. This is a bird's eye view looking down on the beach, what it could look like, and then those rain gardens behind. And this beach is definitely underutilized. Not many people go there, but you can walk there from town. And then this is if you're up on the boardwalk and you're looking towards downtown. Right. So this was also, I should have mentioned, really collaboration with 3 different organizations in the town. So it was the town of Nantucket, the Nantucket Islands Land Bank, and Remain. And we haven't had a collaboration like that at all for any town projects. So it really helped us, really think outside the box as far as partnerships that you can use locally and to help fund these expensive resiliency projects. The next project is in one of our great ponds. It's called Sacajah Pond, and this is a living shoreline. Back in 2018, the road one lane was eroded by a winter storm, and it had to be closed. And so that caused an isolation risk to all the people that lived out kind of on our eastern end of the island. The DPW did an emergency fix to basically put in a Jersey barrier wall. And 8 years later, it's still there. So this project is using kind of a 3-pronged approach. So inland, if you're in the water, those circles, those indicate reef balls. So the picture up top are what reef balls look like. They're eco-friendly, kind of concrete structures that provide habitat to oysters and fish. And they come in all different sizes. And these are used all over the world. So we're putting those in the pond because there is a natural oyster population in there. And through modeling, by putting 2 rows of these things in, we can reduce the wave energy by 90%, which is amazing. And so inland, we're going to add some sand to help nourish the beach there, because right now the pond goes right up to those Jersey barrier walls. There's really no beach left anymore, no dune. And so the idea is really to pull the resource areas from either side of the project area. So beach, plant marsh grass, create a dune system, and then kind of the last defense is to put a sheet pile wall right next to the roadway. The lesson of this project is to be patient because I had been working on this project for over 8 years. And it's one of those projects that you like get the ball rolling and you're like, yes, we're making progress. And then something comes up and you're like, no, why? But we have funding for construction. We're starting the permitting process in the next couple of weeks. So wish us luck. And then the next project is a pilot project. So there are these technologies actually based out of Long Island. And a lot of people say, like, why isn't the town doing anything for erosion? So this company contacted me. It's a father and a son duo. And I took a chance and said, all right, let's try it. Let's do a pilot project. I'm a scientist at heart. I love experiments. So I chose 2 different areas on the island. One has very high erosion. One has less erosion, but still erosion. And so we have these honeycomb structures. They're called cliff stabilizers. You put them on the coastal bank and you plant dune grass or other plants, and it helps stabilize the root system so that they don't get washed out during storm events or rain events. And when those root systems take hold, then you actually take these cliff stabilizers out, so they're temporary. This thing kind of swirling on the left is called a dune bird, and that emulates dune grasses. So in the winter, the dune grass isn't growing, but this helps actually capture all of the sand that's moving in the air and drop down and create a dune. That's how dunes are built. So we haven't gotten these guys yet, just because of the tariffs and stuff is taking a long time. But as soon as we get them, we'll put them out to see how they do. And so we're collecting elevation data to see if, is the sediment actually accreting? Is it eroding? We're doing plant density or mortality. Really, the goal is if these things work on Nantucket, that private property owners can easily purchase them from the company, can install them. They're super easy to install. And then they're also relatively easy to permit. So it took us about a month to permit these things. Other erosion mitigation strategies need heavy machinery on the beaches and can take years to permit. So stay tuned to that. So this picture I just like to show, this is our out in Mattocket where there's a lot of erosion. You can see the coastal bank is pretty steep. After about a month or 2 of installing the cliff stabilizers, look at how much sand accreted. It's amazing. All right, so shifting gears to outreach and engagement. For all of these resiliency projects, we always have a town webpage on the town's website, or project webpage on the town's website. We do both interactive virtual and also in-person open houses or workshops because it's so seasonal, right? So if we're doing something in the winter, we obviously can't hit that seasonal population, and that's when the virtual plays in. We also do 2 identical sessions at different times for people that work. So who can't, come to the 9 a.m. session, hopefully they can come to the 6 p.m. session to be able to give input and learn about the projects. We also meet with the direct abutters of a project prior to that community event. So we hear what their concerns are and their questions before it's kind of opened up to the wider community. We also like to do a drop-in format if it's in person because we want to meet people where they are. They come in, maybe they want to be there for 5 minutes and just see what's up. Maybe they want to stay there for an hour and learn a lot about the project. And we always have free food, like food, right? And then to entertain the kids, we have a craft table as well. On Nantucket, we have a very large Spanish population. So we always hire translators for these events, and we translate all the materials in Spanish as well. If we're doing virtual, we use something called Mentimeter, which is just a platform. You don't even have to download it, but it's a way for you to give input anonymously for specific questions that we ask if we're virtually. We always record it, put it up on the webpage for the presentations, and then we send out surveys. So if you couldn't make any of the events, you can watch the recording on your own time. You can answer, the 5 or 10 minute survey so that you're still giving input. As far as getting the word out, we try everything. Sometimes we get good turnout, sometimes we don't. But, we do the old fashioned flyers around town. We do email blasts, paid advertisements through all the media companies online. And then we also, for some projects, we have specific project work groups that are either internal within the town or town staff plus external. As far as funding, the Nantucket community is very invested in coastal resiliency. We understand that the longer we wait, the less prepared we will be and the more costly it'll be as well. In Massachusetts, we kind of pride ourselves as leaders in coastal resiliency, and that's not because of me at all. It's because our community understands the risks and the vulnerabilities and what inaction will cost us in the future. So funding for these projects are really a mix between town meeting approved funding, so through the voters, and then also local and state grants. We also have we have had a very reliable funding source through town meeting, which is $1 million a year for coastal resiliency planning. And this has really helped a lot. Like I mentioned, for these coastal resiliency projects, there's things that are always coming up that you can't guess that are going to happen, right? So if you don't have the funding to actually do that survey you need to do, then your project stops. And then you have to wait a year to start again. And that costs even more money. And you might have to redo things. So having that sustainable funding source helps a lot. It also helps with grants. I don't know about Rhode Island, but we in Massachusetts have reimbursable grants, which means you need that money up front. And then you do the work and then you get reimbursed. So this kind of acts as seed money. And it's really a multiplier. So that $1 million can turn into, multi-million dollars. All right. My last 2 slides. These are the most important pieces. So hopefully you're not asleep.
No one just sleeps.
All right. So what Nantucket has learned the hard way that Block Island could learn from us to save time and money. So start with the shared understanding. Don't assume everyone has the same baseline on coastal resiliency. Definitely define the why early and often. Lead with risks and services and costs. So not those anecdotes of, oh, yeah, that place floods 10 times a year. Okay, but like how many times does it actually flood today? And how many times is it projected to flood in the future? This really helps quantify the impacts and supports better decisions and funding asks down the road. Expect disagreement. Some community members will strongly oppose specific projects. That's fine. Build a process that stays transparent and consistent. And outreach is definitely not optional. Meet with abutters first to hear questions and concerns. Address them in the next meeting. Repeat the basics. Connect projects to everyday priorities. So access to the ferries, safety, their homes, infrastructure, etc. And again, meet people where they are. Avoid reactive or piecemeal actions. So small standalone fixes can be costly and less effective without that island-wide strategy and sequencing. And then celebrate the wins. We always get so in the weeds of all the problems, but think about all the wins. So the recommendations I have for Block Island are to designate capacity. So having that dedicated coastal resiliency coordinator, even if it's part-time, really helps keep the momentum and grants moving. So you can't solely rely on the Coastal Resiliency Committee. They've been doing great work, but they're volunteers. You need someone that is within the town to advocate for coastal resiliency, to meet with you all and bring that to the town manager or the town council. Develop an island-wide risk assessment and build a coastal resiliency plan with a clear project pipeline. So looking at it holistically and breaking it down based on that risk assessment of, okay, where do we start first? and plan for the phase implementation and refresh the plan every 5 to 10 years as those risks change. So our coastal resiliency plan is about 5 years old, and we are starting to look at those 40 recommendations and see if we need to change the priorities. Create a reliable funding approach. So what I had mentioned, so that the island can leverage state and federal grants and reduce project delays that generally cost more to you all, to the taxpayers. Keep applying for grants and advocate for state and local partnerships or support where island logistics obviously increase costs for these projects. And don't assume that the state or federal government are going to come bail you out or know best for your island. You all know best. You know what you want. You know what you want the future of your island to be. And so planning helps actually implement that and turn out to how you want it. So with that, there's no perfect resiliency solution. There's only better, more informed choices over time. And with that, I want to thank you all. And I hope that you leave here tonight feeling a little bit inspired to keep the coastal resiliency ball rolling on your island. And I'm happy to answer questions. I think that's what the next segment is.
That was terrific. Thank you, Leah, so much. That's the question. Do we have any cards? We're going to start with we got a card here, but we've got a raised hand. I'm going to repeat these questions because we are recording this. As I mentioned, we want to make sure that the questions are captured. So if you don't mind, I'm going to interpose on that. But Jim, what was your?
One question and one comment. I noticed on the slide was the 40 project with the column labeled estimated benefits or projected benefits or whatever, and every one of them said NA. Either not applicable, not appropriate, or
Yeah, from up there.
So those ones were mostly for the policy-based ones, so we couldn't really put a dollar value on them. But the other ones that are more structural, there are cost estimates for the benefits. So like ecological benefits, which are also very hard to quantify. But access, safety, that sort of thing. Those are more on the structural side.
and my second comment or question is, have you involved any of the churches on the island? A friend of ours is a fellow by the name of Max Wolf, and happens to be the bishop of the Episcopal Church, and he's very much into the community.
Yeah, so when we do outreach, there's an interfaith council, and we usually reach out to them to see if they can spread the word to their membership.
Any other questions? Mary, curious about Nantucket's energy resilience. How severe are the current and predicted impacts of extreme wind on power grid? What grid resilience strategies are considered?
Great question. So we actually have an energy coordinator within our planning and land use department. So it's not really in my wheelhouse. But I will say the blizzard this winter snapped 14 power lines, I believe, and the island didn't have power for, I think, 5 days or longer. So we have National Grid, and unfortunately, they don't work very great with the town. Like we asked them, can you bury those lines instead of creating more power lines in these high wind areas? And it's too expensive, so they don't want to do it. We have 2 cables that run from the mainland to the island. They're actually talking about having to put in a 3rd cable. So we're trying really hard with, pushing solar. We have rebates through the town. I have solar in my house. Actually, haven't paid an energy bill in 4 years. So it's great. But yeah, I'm sorry, I can't speak too much about the electricity because I'm more like coastal resiliency, and the energy coordinator, she wouldn't dive into that.
Thank you. I may need help with the penmanship here. Good stabilizers and dune guards, better than beach fencing? Fencing, right? Okay. Yeah, so comparison to some of these new things?
So the pilot project's still going on, so I don't have, the exact results of them. But I think they could also go hand in hand. The cliff stabilizers are different than beach fencing because they're trying to actually stabilize the bank, the coastal bank, with plants and vegetation. And the sand fencing is really to help capture the sand there. So there are a lot of private property owners that use sand fencing, and it definitely works until a big storm comes and then it rips it out. So it's it depends on what you want to use and how much money you want to spend and what you can get permitted.
So to what extent have projects changed after meeting with the butters?
So not too much. It's more of the questions that they have obviously are like, what are the effects to my property? And so with that, what we do is we either update the modeling to show like, okay, there's actually no negative effects to your property, or if it shows that there may be negative effects, what can we do to reduce those? So all the projects that we're working on right now are really like in the early phase. They're even before the 30% design. So you usually go to 30% design, 60% design, 90% design, and then 100% design is when you're ready to start. So these projects are really early on. We did have quite a contentious abutter meeting. This was before I was the coastal resilience coordinator. We were working with a consultant company, and the vision was to create that Francis Street Beach with the boardwalk, was to kind of create that all the way downtown on the water's edge to help protect the road. And it showed some homes that weren't indicated. And so they were like, oh, the town's going to take our homes. And we're like, no, these are concepts. These are like visioning exercises. We're not taking your homes. So we had to really like flip that narrative and gain their trust back and their support. And now they are supportive of the project.
Thank you. A question about some of the elevated structures like the boardwalks. And how do you comply with the ADA requirements and have the issues around it?
Yes, so that boardwalk is ADA accessible, and the consultant company that we are working with, Skate, also an engineering company with PAR, they know all about that. They've designed it in such a way that it meets those criteria for all ADA.
Other nature-based solutions, have we heard a little bit about, using the oyster bags and dunes? Can you share any other information about other nature-based types of solutions?
So in the plan, we have some dune restoration projects. One that I'm actually working on right now is at our sewer treatment facility. And it faces our South Shore, which is very dynamic. And 2 years ago, we had these weird winter storms that came out of the Southwest. Like, it was like every single weekend in the winter. And it eroded the dune in front of the discharge beds by 100 feet. And so we actually had to close one of the discharge beds, fill it in so that they wouldn't get infiltrated with salt water, because that would mess up the whole system. And so a project that I'm working on right now that we got a grant through the state is to essentially fill in the 3 beds that are closest to the beach with a dune system. And then plan for retreating those beds somewhere else within kind of the footprint of the facility.
Well water. So what is the level of impact that you've seen so far on well water from the sea level rise?
Yeah, so out in our western end, Smith's Point, that's where I grew up in the summers, it's my place. There's actually, you can't drink the water out there because it's salty. And so with the groundwater table and the saltwater intrusion into those systems, it wreaks havoc on homes and pipes and basements and drinking water. You can't drink it.
Thank you. Any other questions from the floor? Um, so this refers to choir lots. Choir lots. Do you have any information or data around that as relative success or failure of those? Any examples? Is there?
There's a couple, so the town hasn't used some in any of our projects, but some private property owners have around the island. And I think it's really site specific and really depends on like how much wave energy you're seeing. There's an area on our east end where, I don't know if any of you have read the articles about the geotubes out there. But next to the geotubes, there was a big, how long it was, but it was definitely like maybe 5 or 6 different parcels that had them. And during a winter storm last year, they all got ripped out. So, but that doesn't mean that they don't, right? So, like I mentioned, you can't stop erosion. You can try to slow it down. And that's one way to do it in kind of a nature-based solution. Using the reef falls, like I said in the one of our great ponds, really helps stabilize those core logs and helps reduce the erosion that they see in them. You also have to maintain them. You can't just put them in and like, that's it. Like you have to add sand to them if they become exposed. So to keep that in mind.
Maintenance. So we have how do you balance the interests of the various constituencies that are on Nantucket and very similar to what we have here? You know, we have year-round residents, we have homeowners who are seasonal, and then we have visitors, lots of visitors. It seems like a tough balancing act.
It definitely is a tough balance. With the town, we are obviously want to like maintain our critical infrastructure to make sure that people can still come to the island and enjoy the island for what it is. So, but with our engagement, that's why we try to do it like in different, multifaceted so that we can try to reach all of those people. Obviously, we can't reach everyone and it's hard to, but we try as best we can and to get their input into, the different designs for what we're thinking and answer the questions.
So question about specifically about Block Island, you came up Cornick Road. Cornick Road is one of our key vulnerabilities, I guess. There has been some discussion about raising Cornick Road to solve to solve flooding. Any response to that or any thoughts on that? Has there been anything like that where you actually literally raise a whole section of roadway?
So we haven't raised anything yet, but that Easy Street project that, gets about 75 times a year so far. One of those or 2 of those designed it to elevate the road to allow vehicles and pedestrians to continue, to the Steamship Authority and downtown. So it's definitely, an option. I like to look at like what are the risks and what are the benefits, and I can't just say like, yeah, definitely elevate it. Like that would not be like I can't do that. But if that is, the best option after you've looked at the risk assessment and gotten input from the community and the cost and the maintenance and all of that, then that would be the best option. But I don't know if it is.
Well, we are certainly several years behind Nantucket, but the question here is, where did you learn? Who did you go to for advice when you started this process going back several years?
Yeah, so
Who did you learn from?
a lot of people. When I came into this position, originally I was the assistant biologist for the town for 9 years. So we have a hatchery there. I built the first oyster restoration project on the island and grew oysters, clams, and scallops for stock enhancement and restoration. And I honestly didn't know a lot about resiliency 3 or 4 years ago. And so I reached out to, my supervisor, Vince. He was the first coastal resilience coordinator for the town. So he's still in our department and I work with him closely and I ask him questions every single day. But I reach out to, like the state agencies, different people around the state or in Rhode Island just to read all the other plans, all the other town plans, and just try to learn as much as possible and share them.
Any other questions?
I have one.
Yeah, good.
Yes, when I come to presentations like this, I get a pit in my stomach worrying about my kids and their future. And I realize there's no young people here. And I'm wondering, on Nantucket, are you integrating your work with the local school and colleges and stuff? And could you help us with a model for that?
And just to restate the question looking at the younger generations, how do we connect through education or other organizations with the younger generation?
Yeah, so I go into the school systems. On Nantucket, we have we've got a public, elementary school, middle school, and high school, and then we have a couple of private, smaller schools too. So I go in actually next month. I'm going into the 8th graders to teach them about coastal resiliency. So yeah, I love going into the schools, and then we have a lot of like different conferences on the island every summer, and I also go off island to do conferences. But yes, definitely get into the school system, reach out, to the local teachers or superintendent, because I know in Massachusetts in 8th grade they're learning about kind of hazard mitigation and all of that, coastal hazards, and so if it fits into the curriculum, I'm sure they'll love.
And in Rhode Island, we have the kids have to do a senior project. I mean, our kids are amazing. They've like banned the plastic bag. This is totally something that young people need to get involved with.
Yeah, absolutely. And when our projects kind of start to be like shovel ready and start to be implemented, a lot of I want to pull in students to help volunteer with plantings and that sort of thing.
Thank you. Got you.
Yeah.
Jen.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Jen.
How long did it take before the town actually agreed to put $1 million a year?
So 2019 was really when we started the resiliency planning in earnest, and the first funding for the $1 million was in 2022.
So that took about 3 years.
Yeah, so the plan was like adopted by the select board, and yeah, about a year after, or actually that year.
Just to build on that, what did it take? What was the process to convince the taxpayers that was something that was worthwhile?
Yeah, so if you're not into town government, it's quite a process. So for us, we have to put in a capital request and justify it, and that goes through the town manager and town administration. And then if they approve it, then it goes to the capital programs committee for them to talk about and approve. And then it goes to town meeting for voters to vote on it. So because we had the coastal resiliency plan that, really laid out a framework and cost estimates for the projects, it really showed like we need money to start this thing. This isn't just a plan that's sitting on the shelf. This is something that we need to do now. And I think with being islanders and seeing flooding and erosion and that sort of being part of our lifestyle, that we need to start.
So having the plan and that was your recommendation was certainly an important first step. There was another question. Yeah.
Yeah, I just want to put in a plug for Benny because what Sue's question was, is this is what this organization does, to educate the next generation on the issues that happen on the relevant resiliency.
Yeah.
They
He's gonna have to raise the building pretty soon.
I know.
got to raise this building too at some point, right?
My question is CRMC. They are a big organization that oversees a lot of this stuff, the Coastal Resource Center.
Coastal resource management. Yeah.
How are they adapting to your needs? Are they being difficult? Are they actually getting better at this stuff?
Okay, so that's Rhode Island specific. Unfortunately, every state is different.
Yeah.
Is there a comparable Is there a comparable governing body that's our, that's a Rhode Island issue, but the.
So Massachusetts, we have to go first. You're working with seniors.
Thank you.
We have to approve it. Then it goes to the Department of Environmental Protection. And then sort of based on the project, there's, I mean, for the Easy Street project, I'm not kidding you, there's like 30 different agencies that we need to go to or something that we need to get. So in Massachusetts, we're really behind with our regulations. So our wetlands regulation for the state hasn't been updated since the 70s. And we have had in Nantucket at least 9 inches of sea level rise since 1965. So the Wetlands Protection Act is great for like not building a Walmart on a marsh, but it is not great for actually implementing coastal resiliency projects. So there's this really like, we're almost like, I don't want to say too far ahead of the state, but we kind of are. They need to update their regulations, which apparently they've been talking about for 20 years that they'll do it, but they haven't yet. So when it comes to permitting, I think it'll be kind of like a fine line. And I'm really working with the agencies of like, well, okay, how do you get this permitted? A lot of them will be like, we're not sure how to permit this, but nobody will, and we'll figure it out. You're like, what? That should not be.
All right, I got a note here. So back to Sylvia's question about the education engagement of youth on the island. Just to mention that Nora Clark is the climate resilience coordinator for the Nature Conservancy. She's been working with the Buckdown School. Which grade are you working?
Sixth grade.
Sixth
but
grade.
10th too.
Also,
Senior projects.
many of us have seen Kim Gaffett out planting dune grass in the spring with students from. So, and yes, the senior project, and if we've had any directly with youth and
In the work.
in the works, hoping that we can get more youth involved. So I just thought that was
Okay, anyone else? Okay, well, I think it's time to wrap it up.